We have a quorum. Is there any conflicts of interest? None declared. Let's move on to the minutes from both the hearing and the meeting. Is there any discussion or changes? Hearing none, I make a motion that we approve the minutes from both the public hearing and the public meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. The motion carries. The meetings are approved. Number 3, report of the Oil and Gas Administrator. Dennis, do you want to?
Okay, so let's see if I can rip through this. The draft letter for the Interstate Oil and Gas Compact Commission requesting a peer review. It's a service that the AZOGCC provides to member states. There's been a couple of iterations of that version that's been sent out to the Commission for comment, and entertain any additional revisions that you might have. I didn't receive anything in email beyond one small correction that Dr. Nishins had. Otherwise, I asked the Commission to vote to approve it. Frank Thor will be the one signing the letter, and I'll mail it out. Probably be Monday's mail if it gets approved today.
Any comments or discussions on that letter?
I move that we approve the letter to be submitted to the AZOGCC for to review our rules.
Frank Thorwald here. Oh, second. We have a second. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say nay. The motion carries. The letter is approved, Dennis.
Okay, thank you very much. Plains LPG Services at the Bumstead facility. I witnessed an MIT test and part of their workover back in mid-March, and it was a very good experience. Plains LPG folks are very easy to work with, and very interesting, very helpful, very eager to comply with operations.
That's what's an MIT test?
Mechanical integrity test. Anyway, the test showed that cavern number 3, which is the cavern closest to Dysart Road, is still several hundred feet to the north, is a very stable cavern. It's not, did not lose pressure, and over the 24-hour period they let it set in. Actually let it set longer than that. I think it was more like 26 or 30 hours. And the cavern is not expanding in size or shrinking in size. So anyway, that cavern has been tested in its 5-year cycle, and meets the specifications per the rule and per their own standards. In regards to Enterprise Products at the Adamana facility, a similar LPG underground salt cavern storage facility, they're going to be performing workovers and MIT mechanical integrity tests on 6 of their cavern wells starting next Monday, and I hope during the course of maybe more like a month of all those tests and workovers to get up and witness and do an inspection. They have, I believe, a total of 12 caverns. At least 3 of them are on a maintenance bypass, meaning that they're not operating because they are not able to ascertain for sure why they can't hold pressure in the caverns. So I'm not sure there's much they can do to repair it. It just seems to be the nature of salt that these things happen. And it also has to do with how well the caverns were constructed. The wells themselves were constructed back in the 70s when these caverns were created. But anyway, I will be going up there sometime during the next month to witness MIT and workovers. Rare Earth Exploration had applied for a permit last summer, went through the plug and abandonment exercise, and now has applied for a new permit, which I issued to them, called the 20-1 State. Its location is north of Heber and west of Highway 377 that connects Heber and Holbrook. They haven't spudded it yet. He indicated to me it'd probably be late April. Sunbelt Holdings had said, this is now old news and not correct, but they had said they were planning to start the plugging operation this week. It's probably going to be next week. But these things happen. It's pretty typical. I mean, you've got to wait for the rig. Sometimes the rig's got equipment problems and so on and so forth. So I attended a meeting with a newly named company called Bright Energy, which is apparently a company formed by APS that's interested in resurrecting the plans to build a new natural gas storage cavern in the Eloy area. They're looking at a number of areas down there, including the property that Kinder Morgan holds. El Paso Natural Gas had gone through this exercise some years ago, and Bright Energy is interested in starting that all over again. We're not going to hear from them for at least a year because this is just a preliminary stage, and they wanted to meet and greet with ADQ, and I was invited to attend that meeting also. It was a very interesting presentation on what they plan to do. The purpose of the facility will be to address spikes in need for electricity by providing natural gas out of the storage caverns to drive generators to meet spikes in peak demand, because it's mostly solar operated in that area, I think, and obviously if the sun goes down, because you got peak demand, especially in the summer, you got to have a source of energy to convert to steam to run those generators.
Dennis, I have a question about that.
Okay.
What is their estimate of the thickness of the salt and anhydride in the Picacho Basin?
You know, that part of the presentation, I got the sense that there's actually two beds of salt. One is less desirable, it's too shallow, and it doesn't lend itself to creating cavern in it. It may have other impurities in it, but the deeper salt is the cavern that they want to create, the deeper formation that they want to create the caverns in. I understood them to say that it's about equivalent to the thickness of the Luke salt body, but I understand it's actually thicker. Is that correct?
Well, I made that comment to you at one point, but I can't justify that statement. But it certainly is. It's on what gravity surveys. It looks like it would be a significant thickness. More so than the Luke.
Hey, Dennis, I was going to say, there's about 5 or 6 years ago, there was a FERC conference here in Arizona that covered the Eloy salt area. They're looking at natural gas storage in the salt basins. There's a whole bunch of stuff available on information here. Maybe give you a link to all that stuff here if I can find it.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, I think there's a couple of wells that were drilled out there that went like 7,000 or 8,000 feet deep and were still in the salt deposit. I don't know if they've ever really figured out exactly how thick it is based on drilling.
Yeah, they said that in their presentation. They also said that their system of brine disposal won't be with ponds because it'll take up too much surface area. They're talking about an injection scheme
Right.
that would
Yeah, that was the
develop.
previous ideas too behind that too.
Revised application form 3, application for permit to drill. That's going to be reposted on the oil and gas website. That will include now a series of check boxes at the top for an applicant to identify whether they're drilling for oil, for gas, for helium, whether it's an injection well, CO2, that kind of thing, just to help clarify and eliminate confusion in the future about what an operator is drilling for. It'll help me when I'm looking at spacing requirements.
Dennis, on the website, didn't we just update the viewer and other items as well?
Yeah, I don't recall whether I made the announcement or not, but the oil and gas viewer is now fully functional, and my hat's off to ADQ's IT department. When I say fully functional, I mean that you will find wells drilled by Ranger Development in 2017 on there. What's still to be done, and I hope to populate this part of the viewer in the next several weeks, is to put the electronic copies of all the documentation that a company submits over time when they're drilling a well or when they're completing it, so on and so forth. But prior to it being updated, the oil and gas viewer had documentation only up until 2010, and then it was just kind of neglected. So there was a lot of backroom stuff that had to be loaded in there and so on and so forth. But we're done, and it's working as intended. So it's a fully functional device again. And it's been featured as like a map of the day by the American Geological Institute. It's now the American Geosciences Institute. So it's captured nationwide attention. I think that's pretty interesting. Something that Arizona can be proud of.
What is the URL designation for that to access it?
It would just be one of the tabs off of the homepage of the Oil and Gas Commission's home website.
Oh, okay. That explains it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's all you need. You don't need it. I mean, there is a specific URL, but I don't have it committed to memory.
Yeah. All right.
There's an annual inspectors forum that's hosted by the Interstate Oil and Gas Compact Commission. It'll be in Oklahoma City on Sunday, May 6th. I'll be attending that. Gives a chance for me to network with other states and discuss topics of current concern and learn what their topics nationwide are of current concern. Okay.
Any discussion on anything Dennis has talked about? Hearing none. Public request for agenda items. Dennis, what do we have here?
Tony Hines had asked a question during the solicitation for participation by the public last time, February 23rd regular meeting. He asked a question about what the limits of confidentiality were for the AEP 16-1, and Mr. Zeiss said the best we can do is put that on the agenda for the future, so that's why it's here. So, Mr. Hines, feel free to elaborate with your question, and then we can have a discussion.
Okay.
Could we, real quick, could we scroll down a little bit on the screen too, to kind of keep up with?
Well, it's on the screen. The agenda item's on the screen. I'll put it at the top.
It's not reflecting.
It's not showing. Dennis is what he was saying.
Oh, it's not. All right. Go ahead, Tony. I'll fix it.
Yeah, as a based on the hearings on the 16-1, and then also that was actually not the hearings on the 16-1, the hearings on the 15-1 oh so well that we did. It came out, well, they were drilling a well for oil, and therefore its location exception was okay. It wasn't a location exception, it was a legal location. And so it raised a question of, well, okay, if they find gas, they requested confidentiality for their well information, which is normally given the 2-year request for completion information, logs, things of that nature, just under the rules. So if they actually had found gas and the well wasn't originally spaced or approved for a gas well, the question is, would the affected parties that would have been the affected parties in that case, i.e. us in section 15, would we be entitled to the testing information or any information related to gas? Not necessarily maybe the public, is entitled under the confidentiality, but at least the affected parties being us. And I just couldn't find anything in the rules that kind of addressed to what extent the confidentiality would extend to affected parties. So the question is, would we be entitled to their completion report and testing information and that well, if there was gas information? We understand for oil, no problem, but
Rick, what's the AG's office?
Actually, right now I'm going to have to sit down and with Dennis and go over it again. The issue is, I think that originally their well spacing exception, and they're indicated they were drilling for petroleum-based product, a hydrocarbon. They find gas. I don't know the effect without looking further into it.
Tony?
yes, sir.
Yeah. Now, when you're referring to this issue, you're talking about helium gas, right? In the Coconino or the Shenron?
Yeah, that's what we're interested in, but just in general, I mean, the spacing as it is being gas wells on 640, it would have been an exception whether it's hydrocarbon gas, helium gas, or anything. And we were the offsetting leaseholder, so we would be the affected party regardless of what type of gas. So, of course,
Okay.
that we would be interested. So.
I'd like to add that based on the results of the hearing last time and also discussions, I guess, in the regular meeting, a letter came out that was sent to Mr. LeBlanc that said for his 16-1 well, he was approved for oil based on those spacings, and that he should only be testing for, that is, production testing for oil, and that he would need to come back to the commission for any interest in testing for gas or any other commodity, which is just going to be gas, whether it's helium or natural gas or whatever, because the spacing was for oil. So that letter went out and was clarifying that for him 2-3 weeks ago.
As part of that letter, Dennis, because I was worked with Mr. Turner on that letter. He must monitor for production, monitor to make sure that any gas that comes up, he has to report on. Is that correct?
Right. All right. So there's a difference between what I think is testing for and monitoring. For safety reasons, you need to monitor for H2S. You need to monitor for whatever's coming out of the hole. Any respectable drilling operator is going to do that. But I was talking about testing in the context of for production quantities. You need to test it in a different manner, and I'm not sure what those parameters or what those methods are versus some kind of H2S meter that's detecting gas at certain intervals as you're drilling and so on and so forth. So I was not prohibiting AEP from monitoring for gas at the different levels, because there's all sorts of other gases that can be coming out of the hole that you really don't want coming out. But I'm talking about for economic purposes.
Dennis,
I think that should.
I think your letter clarifies that very well.
And just from following Dennis, that if he comes upon helium and is monitoring, not as production testing, but as monitoring, what steps does he have to take to notify you, if any? Does he have to take any steps?
The rule's very vague, and my checklist doesn't spell it out specifically, and I don't know historically what the past administrator expected, but a lot of operators would voluntarily submit just other logging information. There's a mud log that is produced a lot of times, or just different things, and yeah, they might say that there's traces of it, but H2S was detected at this level or that level. I don't know whether they get into that much detail about it was methane, or it was helium, or CO2, or nitrogen. I don't know.
Mr. Hines, I think the bottom line is he's not to be out there. He does not have authorization to do production testing for helium, because that wasn't the basis of the permit he was granted.
And for their benefit too, I mean, obviously it's not a black and white, science. They could get an indication that they're logging that there might be hydrocarbons. So there's heavier hydrocarbons. They would go ahead and test looking for oil. And if that test showed gas, then it kind of opens up that gray area of, oh, okay, there's a test now that actually shows gas test. And if that information would be shared with the affected parties, whether it's helium or whatever. But I realize y'all can't answer it. You need to maybe research.
Yes.
But, just wanted to put that question out there for y'all to think about.
We should table this for a future meeting.
If we could, please, I will do research on it, and then Mr. Turner and I will discuss it. Certainly I don't set agenda for next meeting, but it may show up on the next meeting agenda for further discussion.
Mr. Chair, before we take a move to table on it, perhaps maybe an outline of how we get a request of confidentiality and basically what steps we take, and also if the party or the other party doesn't like our ruling, how they can basically get administrative review on it. Because I'm a little leery, one, responding to this hypothetically. Number two, I don't want the commission to, I'd like the commission to think this through first before they do it, and that there be mechanisms in there to try to protect confidentiality and also make sure that things that really shouldn't be confidential, don't become confidential.
Thank you, Commissioner Cooper. Commissioners, what's your thoughts on that? Dale?
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's very logical.
Bill?
Yeah, just a really general thought that, in the course of exploration, of course, I'm used to mining, which oil and gas and helium are a little bit of a different creature, but I think God's rules still apply everywhere, that you can, using your human brain, you can go in and look for something and stumble across something else. And I would look at it that more power for you. We shouldn't do anything to discourage that in the context of you still have to live within the rules. That's the only comment I'd have, is I get a little bit leery as a geologist about requiring somebody to say, I'm looking for this and nothing else, because you can find other stuff, and they're the ones that stepped up to the table and raised the money and drilled the hole, and if they find something else, there should be a mechanism to allow them to benefit from it. I'm not sure if that comment applies at the moment, but that's kind of my thoughts. Thank you.
Commissioner Cooper, I think you have good comments. How would you suggest that we do this?
I would suggest that we table this item to a future meeting and direct staff to perhaps give us a report of mechanisms on how the confidentiality works, the request, and how a party can object to the status and seek relief from the Superior Court if they think that the Commission has gone beyond their authority.
Commissioners, do you all agree with Commissioner Cooper's thoughts on this?
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree.
I do too.
And this is really, to me, is just like probably just a one-page schematic of basically what the steps are.
We will have that prepared.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. The next one, number 5, Ranger Development. Rangers seeking approval for temporary shut-in status. Dennis, do you want to take the lead here?
Just as a broad overview, first of all, the Ranger 33-3 PD Pentadome and 34-3 PD wells were spacing exceptions that were approved in the hearing last July. Ranger drilled them. I'll let Tony Hines or Kurt Castanius speak to the details of the results, but basically they weren't happy with the results and they submitted the required documentation to me for requesting a shut-in status, and the rule requires that the Commission approve a shut-in status, which I recommend that they do. I think you want up to 5 years for shut-in status, temporary abandonment.
That's the way I wrote the request. I leave it at y'all's discretion as to what you can.
I don't have a problem with it for 5 years, but if you want to expound on more details, feel free.
Yeah, I'll start with the 34-3 first. It's the simplest at the moment. The well was drilled. There was some light, very light gas. When they drilled the well again, we're drilling with air, but it was not measurable on the pressure from the shin rump. So that indicated, well, we've got a tight matrix. We have this whole program to go out and stimulate wells, and we're going to be drilling more wells and stimulating some of these things, and we hope that we're going to find the secret to be able to help open up some of the tighter zones. And so the well, it was drilled down, we set surface casing, it's cemented with cement returns back to the surface. We have a cement bond log that shows it's all covered up. So we're asking that the well, one of the requirements, I guess, under the rules, we got to demonstrate or at least indicate the future potential benefit, the use of the well to be shut in. We provided 4 potential, beneficial uses of the well. One is potentially we could still go down and deepen it to explore for gas in deeper zones, either down in below the coconino, because we've already touched the coconino, down the corduroy, Fort Apache, or even deeper. Another one is the well is situated where, because it is into the coconino, we could actually run casing and convert the well potentially to an injection well for water, for disposal, from production, from things in the area. Again, we're on that one status, we're kind of waiting to see how the Arizona primacy request from the EPA advances to be able to get that approval. Otherwise, it's a well over a year and a half process to go through the EPA. So We don't know that it's going to be any faster for Arizona to get the approval from EPA, but we want to see how that transpires before we consider whether we're going down that path. The third one is to actually, based on these other results, potential of stimulation in these other shin rumps, possibly go ahead and run casing in the well in the future and actually attempt a stimulation to see if we can actually open this up and get some commercial flow out of the well. And then the last potential use is the rancher in the area. We're in a very desert area, and we know there are water zones at Pole that are potential use. He's already stated if we ever come up with some wells that's left over, we'd like to convert them to water producers for his cattle. So those are the 4 potential beneficial uses for the justification of the shutting.
Tony, I have a comment. I think you said that you could perforate and use the coconino for disposal. Did you say that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's one of the potential for the injection well, a disposal well.
But isn't the coconino the main freshwater aquifer?
No, actually that is part of the big technical work that we have to do with the AZOGCC, and we've already gone through that. We've started that process. Down at St. John's on the Little Colorado, it is a freshwater aquifer, and the coconino in general is considered an aquifer. But aquifer isn't limited to fresh water. Where we're at is 50,000 parts per million in the 40 to 50 plus parts per million chlorides, because it's all very concentrated on the north and northeast up on the high, and so we're 1.5 times the saltiness of the ocean, down in the coconino where we're at. The water production out of either the coconino or the shin rump is actually in the 30,000 to 40,000 parts per million chlorides. What we've seen could easily go back into that particular zone on that. So that's the reason why we're targeting it. Plus it's something that is so thick, well, we would actually drill the whole thickness to limit the radial extent of injection should we get that far. So.
I would suggest that Ranger may want to work closely with AZOGCC. My understanding in the state of Arizona is every aquifer is considered drinking water aquifer unless it gets reclassified by the director, to my knowledge. I don't think there's an aquifer in Arizona that's ever been reclassified. So I would suggest working closely. I understand that AZOGCC wants primacy in the DYC. It's currently somewhat in its infancy still. I understand you wanting to wait. However, I would strongly urge you to work closely with AZOGCC so that, especially the APP program, otherwise you may find yourself in violation.
We've had multiple meetings, just so you know, starting the process with him. So,
Thank you, Mr. Hines.
Any questions or other discussions on this?
Mr. Hines, how many years are you requesting on your shut-in status?
I worded it for up to the 5 that's shown in the rule, not knowing this 2-year process on the primacy, or maybe we'll do something faster depending on the results of these stimulations.
I would recommend for a full 5 years they can only drop out of TA status beforehand, and they're required to notify us when they do. So gives them wiggle room.
We have a motion.
Any motions on this?
Can I just say so moved?
We don't have a motion.
I move, this is Frank Thorwald, I move that we grant a temporary shut-in status for 3 years for the 33-3 and the 34-3.
Second.
Excuse me, 3 or 5?
I said 3, but
Were you requesting 5?
Actually, do you want me to explain on the 33-3 first also before you do this?
Okay.
you go ahead.
Okay. Now, on the 33-3 well, on the information, it's the same thing, same request. We drilled the well. There is, essentially, no shows, but there's a live flow. There's always pressure. We think it's less probable, maybe for a stimulation, but then again, you just never know, and it's based on this channel. information we have. So we have the same 4 reasons for potential beneficial use. The only difference in the 33-3 is we have mentioned in the proposal we have to do some additional remedial work for the shut-in on that well. The cement bond log did not look good up in the upper part of the hole. We do have cement isolating the zones from below, so the salt water should not be able to get up to the other zones, but we don't have good cement across the zones themselves. So we will be going in and actually trying to do what they call a top-out job, where we'll go down the backside, pump cement to cover the zones, and we will run a new cement bond log and submit that. After which we would, ask that the well be given the shut-in status for the up to 5 years old.
Thank you, Tony. We have a motion and a second on it. Given that information, I would modify that to.
I'd like to modify.
Yes, go ahead.
I think that we should grant it for 5 years.
And I would add that what we need to do is to that they have to do the modifications on the 33-3 that they've mentioned for that status. That's with that, it would be acceptable to me. How about
Commissioner Thorold, may I have a quick comment?
Go ahead.
So as to the current motion on the floor under 34-3, we are talking about granting them temporary shut-in immediately, and on 33-3, prior to shut-in, they must provide evidence that they have completed the remediation on the well, and then upon completion, they would be given whatever period of time that you agree, the board votes and agrees on for the temporary shut-in status.
Correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner Cooper, do you agree with that? You seconded.
I do agree with the time frame amendment and also the requirement that they must complete the remediation prior to the temporary shut-in status being granted.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays? No. The motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item on the list, Arizona Energy Partners. Dennis, do you want to?
Can you hold on a second? I need to
Certainly.
catch up with my notes here. Well, in regards to Arizona Energy Partners, I'm requesting that we go into an executive session so I can discuss a meeting that we had, Mr. Thorold and I had with Mr. LeBlanc, and also permit extensions that have been requested for 2 wells that I permitted a year ago in April. I gave them 1 renewal of 6 months, and as I think I've said before in this meeting, my habit is to seek the Commission's approval for any additional extensions of a permit after 1 year. So in other words, I give a permit extension that extends it up to the year, because the first issuance of the permit they have 180 days, so I'm willing to give it to him. That'll make it for a total of a year, but now we're past the year, and he's asking, or we will be past the year on April 30th to this year.
Dennis, are you also requesting that we go into executive session with regard to Blackstone?
Yes, I would be.
Any discussion on this? Any motions to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Dale?
Commissioner Thorold?
Dale, how do you vote? We've lost Dale. We have the ayes carried.
My suggestion may be to finish the agenda first and then have executive. By that I mean the report and the call to public, so that if people here do not wish to stay around, they're free to go. That's just a suggestion.
I mean, we've already voted to go into executive session.
Let's go.
So, That's a very good point.
Actually, you can hold off going into executive session and if you wish to have a discussion to finish the rest of the agenda, since I believe we can take items out of order. However, I will leave it up to the chairman and the board to make that decision.
Commissioners, your thoughts?
It's the chair's prerogative.
Okay. In that case, let's continue before we go into executive session with the rest of the agenda so people can don't have to hang around. Let's move on to number 9. Number 10. I have no report, additional report to give at this time. Do we have a call to the public here? A call to the public, is there any comments or issues?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
It's not clear to me, Gordon Dudley, it's not clear to me whether you're going to reconvene the regular session after the executive session or if you're going to be done, so nobody needs to stick around once we go into executive session.
Once we're done with the executive session, we will re-adjourn into the public session and then adjourn the meeting.
But there's going to be no further discussion on these items once you reconvene. That's what I'm trying to get clarification.
There may be.
There may be.
So if you're interested in those discussions, certainly you're free to stay and determine if you want to be interested or want to listen. But as for the rest of the parties here, the goal is to provide them some leeway if they wish to leave early. I note in regards to the agenda items, I do not believe there's any indication. Oh, there is an indication there may be a vote. I apologize. Number 7. We may have votes. So 7 and 9 both indicate a possibility of a vote. So yes, it can come back, have an open discussion, and have a vote.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a question of whether to stick around or not once you go into executive
That's your call.
Yeah.
Should we move on to legislative effective, the Arizona Oil and Gas Commission? If there's no more public comment.
Okay. 12, legislation affecting the Oil and Gas Commission. Does anybody know of any? I don't know of any at this point other than what's previously been mentioned. Okay, no discussion on that. Review and consideration of future agenda items. Any discussion on that? Any comments? Okay. Any announcements? Moving on to announcements. No announcements. In that case, we move into executive session. Thank you.
Approximately how much time do you think we're going to be in? 30 minutes?
Probably 30 minutes is my guess.
So plan on 30 minutes for our executive session.
And I'll notify or tell everybody that if you want a cup of coffee or something to drink, if you go to the first floor, make a left outside the door, there's a cafeteria across the corner.
Where's the ball?
Yeah, that's the 7th floor. Yes.
What are you needing, a geologist?
To enlighten them, yes. Get them enlightened.
Dale's on the line. There's nobody else in here. Executive session.
I know.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Dale?
Thank you, sir.
Dale?
Dale, you still there?
Why don't you hang
I wonder
up?
what happened here. I disconnected it.
Why don't you hang up and call Dale back?
Jeez, I don't know. I think we did disconnect.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened. Something must have touched
Just
the.
hang-
As long as we kept on a 3-0 quorum.
Yeah, hang up and call him back.
We'll call him. I don't know what happened. Something touched the deal there. Receiver. Or he. Dale?
Yes, I'm sorry. My my phone went dead. I went to get the other one, and when I came back, I was disconnected.
We're out of executive session, whoever is.
Make sure I don't have the wrong thing up here. Alright, we're okay with that. There's one little thing I need to do.
Where do you get this at? Is that from the cafeteria down?
No, there's a coffee shop right by over here on Kite, right where I come out of my building.
Okay.
There's a coffee shop open from 7 to 11.
Oh.
Right next to the attorney's office over there.
Okay.
1 street east of 15.
I'm gonna go see Commissioner Cooper next time, so I don't have to look at a cup of coffee. I'm trying to cut back, but it's still, good coffee is worth it.
We're back in public session. Dennis and Rick, could you please discuss item number 6, Arizona Energy Partners?
Arizona Energy Partners is requesting an extension of 2 of their permits. The AEP 2-1 Navajo Incline and the AEP 2-1 Manuel Seep. Both of those permits expire April 30th, end of this month. And I've given them one extension from last October, September timeframe, whatever it is. Mr. LeBlanc has confirmed that that's what he wants, confirmed in writing that that's what he wants. And so I'm requesting that the commission approve another 180 days extension for permit to drill on the 2-1 NA and 2-1 MS.
Before the vote, Commissioner Thorwald,
Yes.
if we could separate the vote between AEP 2-1 NA and 2-1 MS because there's 2 separate votes.
Okay. Then do I have a motion on AEP 2-1?
Mr. Chair, before the motion, I do have one question.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Turner, how was the request given to us to extend? What format is it transmitted to us?
So we had a meeting with Mr. LeBlanc on 29th of March, and I wrote an email to him to confirm that these were the things we discussed. And one of the things I mentioned in the email is that we had a discussion that you have requested of me to extend the permit on those 2 wells. And then he wrote back and said he confirmed in writing, he confirmed that in an email.
Do we have any standard forms where we make that where an applicant will make that request?
No, we don't really. I think the sundry notice has been used in the past, but I know that previous administrators have accepted, I think they may have been accepted verbally, but they've accepted emails or sundry notices. Frankly, the rule doesn't say it has to be done this way. In terms of extensions, it just says it may be extended upon request. That's how the rule is phrased.
In the future, and maybe we need to do this as a board policy to future meeting, that we require it to be some type of separate writing, whether it's electronic or not, so that we have something in the file, because I would hate to try to go through an email exchange and try to find out where these various extensions are being requested or whether they were even requested at all. So I'd like to have something a little cleaner than that perhaps in the future.
So you're recommending like an established procedure of how to extend or pass a request?
Or just a board policy that the person seeking the extension needs to basically give that to us on, in writing by a separate instrument, so that we have something in the file showing that there was a request, rather than attaching basically an email chain.
Dennis, why don't you put the form together for that and then bring it to us before a vote on it at a future meeting?
Make note that I will do that.
A comment, and I'd like to see on that, included in that is some kind of a statement on as the 180 days comes to a conclusion, what needs to happen then and what time frame, so that the document also says, if they don't complete it by 180 days, what has to happen, or what
Actually,
will happen.
Breaks a couple of questions of mine. So talking about a form, talking about the duration might be 180 days. How many times does the commission want to give me authority to approve an extension before the commission should step in and approve it? What I've been doing is the first time I do it, the second and succeeding times I request the commission to approve it.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the commission would think.
It'd be
about
my
that.
preference, and we had that presentation, that you bring it to us, and we'll give you direction at that time, at that meeting.
Okay.
Would be good.
No.
The second time and beyond.
Well, we can just discuss this at the future meeting.
Yeah, okay.
Right now, we have the AEP 2-1 for Arizona Energy Partners. Do I have a motion on that?
I move to extend that permit by 180 days.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? The motion carries. The AEP 2-1 is extended for 180 days.
Well, MS or NA?
NA, first one.
Okay, yes, NA. Now we have the 2-1 MS. Dennis, anything different on that one?
Only to say that I have in writing from Mr. LeBlanc that his main target for the 2-1 MS is oil, and the spacing, he meets the spacing requirements for an oil well in the 2-1 MS.
Just to clarify, Mr. Turner, that he doesn't have the proper spacing for gas production. Is that correct?
Yeah, one of them is within the 1660 vintage requirement from the border,
Okay.
from the unit battery.
So for the 2-1 MS, do we have a motion to extend that for an extension?
I'll make that motion,
Please state your motion.
that we extend the permit status of the 2-1 MS for a period of 180 days.
I'll
And
second.
it is our understanding that that's permitted as an oil test.
I second that motion. All in favor of that, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. The motion carries. 2-1 MS has been extended as an for oil. Yeah. The next one is the request for the legal, the shut-in status of the 16-1 well for 1 year. Dennis, additional discussion on that?
I received a sundry notice, and also we had a discussion and a confirmation email reply from Mr. LeBlanc that he would like to put the 16-1 well into shut-in status. He's not drilled to total depth on that well. His proposed total depth is approximately 4,700 feet, something like that. He's only drilled to about 2,700 feet. He wants to shut in and have permission to keep it shut in for a period of 1 year, at which point he will come back and start drilling again in that well to deepen it to total depth. So shut in is a little bit different than temporary abandonment, and specifically he's requesting shut-in status.
Do we?
Is there any requirement that they have to show that there's a need for shut-in status? Any testing information, for example?
I didn't ask for anything specifically. I think that he hasn't completed drilling, and he stopped drilling and moved off location to start another well. He wants permission to come back and finish drilling later.
Mr. Turner, has he provided evidence of a casing integrity?
I don't believe so.
And
Is that a requirement for shut-in?
it is under R 127125B. Operator demonstrates to a quorum of the commission a future beneficial use of the well and submits a sundry notice to the commission containing the following information. 1. Evidence of casing integrity as required by R 127112, including a complete description of the current casing, cementing, perforation record of the well. 2, the stimulation and cement squeeze record, and complete data on the results of any well test performed to date, and 3, all other well data required by R 127121A.
All right, so he's fulfilled number 3 with a well completion report. I don't have a cement bond log from him. And as far as casing integrity, it's my personal, or I should say my professional opinion, that given the recent drilling of the well, that I can expect the casing integrity is intact, and I wouldn't require a pressure test on the casing.
And just for information, then, I know to the commission, the way Mr. Turner's just described it was required by statute. And with that, we can move on.
Discussion on this?
I think we should table this until we get that cement log.
I agree. Anybody, any other discussion on it? And we will table it till the next meeting.
Do we need to vote on the table?
Probably.
Yes.
Then
Okay.
I move to table this matter to the next regular meeting.
I second that motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. The ayes, any opposed? Any, the motion carries. That is tabled till the next meeting. Anything else before we move on to item 8?
Mr. Chair, do we need to direct Mr. Turner to work to legal counsel to respond to AEP's response to our written communication?
I believe we do.
And then I would make that motion to authorize our administrator to work with legal counsel to respond to the recent comments of AEP in response to our written communications on those permitting matters.
I would second that motion. All in favor of that? Say
Aye.
aye. All opposed? The motion carries. We move on to item 8, Blackstone exploration. Dennis?
Blackstone has 5 wells that were drilled in 2016. The Rocking Chair Ranch number 1, 2, 3, and 4, and a well called the State number 4 on Arizona state land. Drilling was completed by 1 rig in succession from over a period of 6 months in the first half of 2016. Those wells have remained unattended, and I've gone through inspection process and requirements of good housekeeping and so forth, and we're now at the point where they want temporary abandonment status, or they want shut-in status of some of the wells. He's provided a sundry notice to me saying that he wants to perforate 2 wells. Actually, he has done the perforations. His plan is to go back into these 2 wells and do some swabbing to test for helium at the intervals that he perfed, which is in the range of 650 to 680 feet or 890 feet, depending on the well. And for the other 3 wells, the Rocking Chair Ranch 1, RCR 4, and the State Land number 4, he would like temporary abandonment status. So,
Has he provided the bond logs and the integrity, casing integrity?
for cement bond logs, I have an electronic copy of a cement bond log for the Rocking Chair Ranches 1 through 4, all 4 of those wells. And I have 1 paper copy for the Rocking Chair Ranch 3, I believe, a paper copy, so a duplication there. He's not run any casing integrity tests of any kind or provided any data that confirms the casing integrity is good in those wells. Again, in my professional opinion, I'm not sure that's necessary given how recent those wells were drilled. But in addition, he's not done a cement pond log at all in the state land number 4, and again, there's no casing integrity. So I don't know the condition of the cement or anything in regards to the Arizona state land number 4. The state land number 4, I would like to inform the commission also that Blackstone's long-range plans might be to convert that well to a water disposal well. State land might appreciate knowing that in the future, but that's just kind of a gleam in his eye as far as his long-range planning. And I will be advising him in the future about what he needs to do when that time comes.
Let's take these individually.
I may have a comment first.
Go ahead. I just wanted to start at one so it was clarified for each one of these, because there's a number of different issues here. On the one that he has talked about abandonment for, but is perforated, it seems that we should have no abandonment issues. I mean, we should not abandon that one or vote to abandon that until sometime in the future when he needs to come back to us on that, considering he's perforated and wants to test on that. That should be a separate item. Discussion on that.
I have a question. Maybe it's out of place, but we're talking about different reservoirs now than we have been all the rest of the day. Dennis, can you tell me what his objective is? What stratigraphic zone?
I believe it's the Coconino. It's not the Chinook.
Yeah, there's no Chinook there, that's for sure. Okay, so it'll be in the Coconino. All right, I'm sorry to interrupt that.
And I wanted to clarify that actually for the 2 wells that he's done perforations on recently, he's requesting a shut-in status in the future once he does his testing, if the testing proves that there isn't a commercial economic benefit right now. It's a little different than temporary abandonment.
Is there any further things that need to be done with regard to approvals with regard to the testing and the perforation process at this time?
I guess not. I'm not sure I completely understand the question.
In other words, do we need to make any kind of approvals at this time with respect to the process that he is currently engaged in testing those wells after now that he has perforated them?
Well, he doesn't need approval from the commission to do the testing. He's got to complete that, but I guess what he's asking for is, in advance, is if he wants to shut in, can he have approval today to do that? Or does he need to come back later after his testing results are
I think this
presented?
is premature, and I think we should table it
No.
until he provides all the information we need.
And
That would be compliance with Rule 12-7-125B.
And just for the record, let me read R12-7-125B. Talks about an operator may temporarily abandon or shut in a well for up to 5 years if the operator demonstrates to a quorum of the commission: first, if any future beneficial use of the well; next, submits a sundry notice to the commission containing the following information: first, evidence of casing integrity as required by R12-7-112, including a complete description of the current casing, cementing, and perforation record of the well; next, the stimulation and cement squeeze record and complete data on the results of any well test performed to date; and 3, all other well data required by R12-7-121 capital A. And I don't believe he's done that.
He's provided item number 3 that you read, which is the well completion report
Okay.
for each well.
which 2 wells are we talking about?
We're talking about the Rocking Chair Ranch 2 and the Rocking Chair Ranch 3 for shut-in status that he's done perforations on.
Okay, I make a motion for those 2 that we table the shut-in status until after he has done his testing and we have received the information from him.
As required by R12-7-125.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion before we vote?
Does this include a written letter just to have something in the file that this is what you've given us, this is what we need, so
Correct.
everything's real clear.
Yes.
That would be my intent.
All in favor of this motion, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Okay, those two are done now.
1, 4, and 5.
Yes. Dennis, move on to the next one, 1-5.
Okay, so the Rocking Chair Ranch 1, the Rocking Chair Ranch 4, and the Arizona State Land number 4 wells. He's requesting temporary abandonment status for 5 years on those 3 wells.
And as we discussed earlier, do we have all of the records testing for the integrity, et cetera, for?
I have a cement bond log electronically given to me for the 2 Rocking Chair Ranch wells. I don't have any log about casing integrity or cement bond for the state land number 4. And I also don't have any confirmation as to the cement integrity of the cement bond log, what the bond log shows from any kind of independent outside consultant or whatever he chooses. He hasn't provided any reports saying cement logs show.
And that's for number 4.
Well, that would be for every well, actually, that whether he has a cement bond log or not. In regards to the state number 4, he hasn't even submitted a cement bond. I don't think he ran a cement bond log. From conversations I had with him on the phone yesterday, he told me he has not run a cement bond log, and that he claims the custom is that nobody does that until they perforate their well, which I would dispute that. But so he has no cement bond log. He hasn't run one in the state land number 4, which is one of the temporary abandonment wells he's asking for.
So Dennis, if I interpret what you're saying correctly, we do not have the proper information on the wells that you previously just mentioned, and we need additional documentation on those before we can rule. Is that correct?
Correct.
Then I would make a motion that you and the counsel from the AG's office put together a letter informing him of what we need to be able to rule on this, and that we table this motion until after we have that information.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, just to, perhaps in the letter that we also include the failure to comply with a temporary abandonment shut-in status, what happens to those wells?
I concur with that completely. Dale, do you agree with that?
Yes, I do.
Okay, then we have a motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. We should be completed at this point. Have I missed anything?
I wouldn't tell you if you did.
Oh, well, thank you. In that case, we are adjourned.